Thanks to everyone for coming out. It's a real honor to be speaking to you all. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first to kick things off. So those of you that didn't read the spiel, I'm the Physiology Manager at High Performance Sport New Zealand. And I'm also an adjunct professor of exercise physiology with AUT University. It's a really cool role where I get to kind of both research and then also try to inform practice for all of our targeted sports in New Zealand. Now with that said, I need to also kind of disclose that everything that's kind of said here tonight is it's not necessarily endorsed by High Performance Sport New Zealand, a government entity. It's Paul Laursen who's has his own opinion on those sorts of things. So you'll hear from my accent. I'm not a born Kiwi, but so I'm from Canada. And I think I came out to the Southern Hemisphere back in 2000. Was in Australia for 9 years, working with their sporting system, the Australian Institute of Sport, before High Performance Sport took a chance on me and brought me over here. I've been here for the last 7 years, and I am now a Kiwi as well, so I'm a Kiwi citizen. So tonight what I want to try to tell you a little bit about is to give you a little bit more information about your own VBike data, and then I also want to talk a little bit about things that I've become more and more passionate about as I've gotten older, and that's the area of health, and of course performance. And interestingly, the two are very much related, so hopefully there'll be some good take-home points. In general, we'll start with maybe about a 30-minute presentation or thereabouts. Feel free to ask questions and interrupt throughout. And then we'll go into some live examples from both Kirk and Roman doing some of the math tests that I'll show you here today. Without further ado, I guess when you look to try to optimize anything, and you guys might in your own business and whatever you do, before we try to optimize anything, we want to first of all, I think, we want to understand what actually matters, and then the second thing we want to do is we want to attempt to make change and try to measure what matters or monitor. So this is the main bread and butter of what I try to do within my physiology team at High Performance Sport New Zealand. We try to gain understanding of what matters, and then we measure it. Now you guys are also equipped here. You're lucky at VBike in that you've got some great tools here with the power meters and the heart rate monitors, etc. You can measure what matters. So maybe the first bit of this presentation will just be here to try to I'll give you some ideas on what I think matters. So we'll try to understand what matters to both health and performance. And this is. I should also kind of disclose, that's me by the way, 2013 Ironman in Taupo. Cycling, triathlon are kind of my sports, mad endurance freak. And it's been a long journey for me to try to optimize my performance. And it didn't come until that actual Ironman where I was finally able to break the 10-hour barrier. That was a very difficult thing for me to kind of do. And I did that through those same sort of principles. I finally figured out what actually mattered for the Ironman triathlon, and then I, of course, measured it and documented it throughout. So I want to tell you a little bit about that today. And I'm also very privileged to have been a coach of this fine lady. This is Karen Hanlon. She's New Zealand's representative in the mountain bike. She's unfortunately had to retire due to an injury. But it was fantastic to be able to work with her for a couple of years, and I guess maybe some of the first principles that we look to for elite athletes, elite cyclists, would be how many people have heard of your VO2 max? Maximal oxygen consumption, fantastic. So this is the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can uptake from the environment, take in through the lungs, transport through the blood into the working muscles, so we can facilitate oxidative respiration or oxidative energy. All right, and you guys measure this. You can measure this as well during something called like your MMP, or your maximal mean power output, over 5 minutes. That's a really good estimate of where your VO2 max sits. So in other words, if you were going to do a warm-up, you're pretty rested and fresh, and you were going to go all out for 5 minutes and measure your power output, you'd be getting a very good predictor of what your VO2 max is from a power output standpoint. Okay, so that's one thing that's probably important, and it's important to so many different sports that we see across the high performance sport umbrella. The other one, we were already speaking about FTP, functional threshold power. This is sustainable power, and it is kind of analogous to your anaerobic threshold. So a good measure, of course, of your FTP is that 20 minutes all out. And so the maximal mean power over 20 minutes, and then take off 5%, and that's pretty much equivalent to what it would be over approximately an hour. So this is a good marker of your sustainable power output. So no matter what sport endurance sport at least that you're into, these principles are very, very. And again, we've got the tools here at VBike to be able to measure those with your power meters. And of course, when you go out into the road as well, if you've got power meters, you can measure it there as well. Yeah. The other thing that's important, does anyone recognize what this little schematic is here? Can anyone tell me what that is? There'll be one person in the room that's going to know it. That's a mitochondria, that's right. So I'm throwing out the geek terms here. But these guys, we have billions of these laden throughout our bodies, and specifically they're in the cells of our bodies. And the more of these that you have, generally speaking, the more you are better at oxidative respiration, oxidative metabolism, aerobic metabolism, all right? And these are the fuel sources, of course, where we've had this delicious dinner here tonight, and we're taking in our glucose, our carbohydrates, our fatty acids, and our proteins, or getting broken down into amino acids. And all of these food stuffs are able to be burnt in those mitochondria to give us energy. And that's ultimately, when you are training, you are making more of these things, and you're improving the ability to get energy from the foodstuffs that we're taking in. Okay, so there happens to be one of those foodstuffs that is probably the most important, in my biased opinion, than the other ones. And Yanni, I think, would share this same bias as I do as well. Does anyone want to take a stab at what that might be? Very good. Yes, it is indeed, I believe it's the fatty acids. The oxidation of fatty acids, your ability to do that as an endurance athlete is paramount to the ease of being able to perform. All right, that's really what it's all about. Not to say that you don't use either of these, and certainly at certain times, glucose is going to give you those high intensity surges, but for prolonged endurance events, and also just having this foundation of fat burning is so critical and fundamental to your health and your performance. And I was very fortunate to come across this paper that I completed with a couple of physiologists, sports scientists from Norway, Professor Steven Seeler and Dr. Ken Hetled. And what we showed in this paper was we showed a one-to-one relationship, a very strong relationship between, on the y-axis here, your fat oxidation rate measured at the mouth, and so in those VO2 max types carts, and your VO2 max that we just spoke about before. So basically the higher your VO2 max, and we are looking in across a group of both recreationally trained and elite runners, and we found a direct relationship between the amount of fat that these individuals could burn and their VO2 max. It was very strongly predictive of their high intensity VO2 max performance. So, and that really hadn't been that well understood until this paper came out, and it somehow seems to have been forgotten a little bit in some of the research that's out there. So fat oxidation is very important, not only for performance as an athlete, but also for your health. Right? And that's the next sort of place I will transgress into. And
just on the fat oxidation,
yeah,
can you affect how good you are at fat oxidation?
you sure can, and that relates to the health here. So I will get to that. I will get to that, Richard. Absolutely. So yeah, fat oxidation also helps for your health, and that brings up a bit of a sobering topic here. It relates to everyone in the room. We're all on the same page with this question here. But and as I age, I'm in now 45. I start to wonder about this question more and more these days. I ponder it myself. So we're looking here at our longevity and the natural lifespan that we all get to get the privilege of going through. And there's more and more research that's now kind of coming out that are, I guess, uncovering the factors that lead to longevity. We're getting clearer and clearer on this. And these come from what are called centenarian studies. So centenarians are individuals that live to 100. And they're in various pockets of the world. And what's been really interesting in the research from these centenarian studies is that they've found that people that live to 100 actually die from the same things that, in terms of the percentage of things that will kill you at age 40, age 60, age 80. So everyone's dying from the same percentage of things, but somehow the centenarians are delaying the onset of those things. So let's find out what those main things are. And you've probably heard, I know you'll have heard of all of these things that come up. But 80% of us will die of the following four key things in that percentage. So heart disease is the first one, right? So atherosclerosis, the development of plaques, inflammation ultimately in your cardiovascular system, and stroke as well. So it's another type of atherosclerosis that happens in your brain. You get a small clot in your brain. Dementia. Or Alzheimer's, and we're hearing more and more about this all the time, but that's another one that's a big killer. And of course cancer. And everyone in this room, I know, because it certainly affects me, everyone in this room will have someone that they know who has one or multiple of these issues, or they'll know of someone that's passed due to these. So it kind of begs the question, how are these centenarians doing it? How are they delaying the development of those 80% things of the things that will kill us? Actually, interestingly enough, the final 20% of those. Does anyone know what the final 20% is that kills us? Accidents, absolutely. That's right. So, and of course, that'd be. So it might be a higher percentage in this room possibly that get that one. I hope not, but you know, we all are very, we're very aware of the chances that we take out there when we're out in the road. So, yes, how is there any one link here between all of these big three or big four diseases? Anyone want to take a stab at what that is? What they're now finally uncovering? Yeah. They are, yes, it is indeed sugar. So it's, but not specifically sugar in your diet, although that is a big contributor, but it is absolutely, indeed, it is sugar in your blood that seems to be a massive contributor to the development of those big ones. And that kind of comes down to your question there, Richard. Is there something I can do to maximize my fat oxidation? Is there something I can do to lessen the I guess the development of these chronic diseases, which are inevitable in all of us, and there is. So it's basically it's finding ways, it's understanding the ability to control your blood sugar. All right. So and I shouldn't just say does anyone know what I guess high blood sugar kind of causes? I know the big four there, but when you have a high surge of blood sugar? Does anyone know the other hormone that kind of comes into play to try to get rid of that? Insulin, that's right. So what winds up happening when we have too much of this blood sugar, we develop insulin resistance. So we're getting this surge of insulin, which is a hormone, and you become more and more resistance to that insulin. So you can't get rid of that sugar, which is a bit of a toxic substance. All right, so yeah, and I guess to Richard's question, what are the ways that we can lower the the blood sugar level, or control that level a little bit better? What do you think is the first one? What's the obvious one? What are we all here for? All right, so movement, exercise, right? So I think that's probably the very first one. So that's absolutely one. So if you're exercising, you are opening up your muscle cells, and you are allowing them to, first of all, make a larger bed of muscle, and skeletal muscle is just a fantastic reservoir, or sink, to take in glucose. So it's your biggest defense against your blood sugar, is to develop a good level of muscle mass. You could do that through the gym, your cycle training, running, but movement is critical, obviously. And then the second one that's already been brought up, of course, is minimizing the amount of sugar that we're going to get in your diet. That's certainly the big one, and not just the sugar, but I guess taking the next step after that one is looking at processed foods and the total carbohydrate content, and we can talk about this more later. This is an interesting one, and this is one I've only really learned about in the last little bit, but stress is a big factor going into your blood glucose response. All right, so when I take this understanding to a whole other level, and one of the things that I actually do is I measure my blood glucose. I'm not a diabetic, but I am a little bit insane in that I actually have a blood glucose monitor on here that's firing in through Bluetooth to my phone, and I can kind of always keep an eye on my blood glucose level here on my phone, which it's absolutely fascinating what I've learned from that process. Obviously get some nice low levels during lots of various exercise protocols, but also I received an email the other day that absolutely drove me mad, and we'll all relate to this, and it spiked my blood glucose quite up to about 8 millimoles for about a good 2 hours. I was so angry. So it just really highlighted to me the influence of stress on my blood glucose level. And then I guess the next one is sleep as well. This is the other factor that can really influence your blood glucose response. And I used to violate this principle a lot to probably get where I am at High Performance Sport New Zealand in my field. I obviously work a lot of long hours, or if I woke up in the middle of the night, I would just get up and work. And again, in seeing my blood glucose response and seeing how it spiked when I did that, I've been able to kind of learn the importance of that sleep and the importance of that in controlling my blood glucose level. These are the other ones that, just out of interest, having a social support system, friends and family, and I find it really interesting in the community here that I can see at VBike. The camaraderie and the fact that everyone's around one another and supporting one another, that's just a real positive thing for your health as well. I just want to mention that. And then finally, whatever it is that you're passionate about in life, just having a sense of purpose is another factor that goes on towards that longevity. So any questions at this point, or any comments? We'll keep things going. Yeah.
So with the stress, was that adrenaline or cortisol that was giving you that pump?
Excellent. It was likely cortisol. The cortisol is a glucocorticoid. So and the word glucocorticoid. So its total role is just to get in there and make more blood glucose out of my liver. But you're right. I mean, adrenaline would have been up there as well. But it was probably the cortisol that was doing that. Great question. Yeah, high cortisol response. Yeah, any others?
Just in terms of the kind of blood sugar thing, there's obviously a level that is bad for you, dangerous for you. Is there quite a wide window in terms of decent performance, or when it drops really low, Where's the kind of sweet spot in terms of that?
Well, that really depends. Great question, but the answer to that question will depend on how good you are at oxidizing the other substrates. One of the cool things I found by using this device, I was out riding with Nikki Samuels, who's one of New Zealand's top triathletes the other day, and we were doing a hard ride through the Y-tax. I was having to work hard to kind of stay with her. And I dropped my blood glucose level down to just below 3, which is quite low. That would cause like that would black some people out. But I'm very LCHF, low carb, high fat. So I'm very solid fat burner. So the answer is it depends. If you're a really good fat burner, then it's not an issue at all. So I was fine. I was tired from the ride, but overall my fat burning was really high, so I've kind of compensated for that. But if you're not well fat adapted, we say, then you could be in a bit of trouble. So the answer is it depends, I'm afraid. Yeah, good question. Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to, I guess the next little phase here is, I'm going to tell you a little bit in a sec here about a paper that I had the honor of co-authoring with a legend, Dr. Phil Maftone, that I know Yanni knows from back in the tri days. And in this paper, we wanted to, one of the things that we both noticed in the world is the number of unhealthy athletes that we see. So we wanted to kind of define these two terms. All right. So and we often say that health and fitness are kind of the same things, and certainly they're related. But just to be very clear, health, when we talk about health, we're talking about a state of complete mental, social, and physical well-being where all body systems, your nervous system, hormone system, immune system, digestive system, where they're working well and they're functioning in harmony. Whereas fitness is really just the fittest guy here is probably Ronan, right? With the big FTP. So he's definitely going to come up here and he's going to be the fittest guy, no question. But is he necessarily the healthiest guy? I don't know. We'd have to get a few more blood tests and those sorts of things. It may be, but it's the two are a little bit different. It's just important to keep that in mind. And the importance of that health is that it can derail your fitness. And I'm sure a lot of us will have heard stories of where this happens. I see it every single day in the work that I do. And often what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to improve more of the health than actually the fitness. The fitness is probably well taken care of. So yeah, this is Phil on the left there, and that's with Amanda Stevens, who's one of the world's elite Iron women. And Phil's biggest claim to fame was his work with Mark Allen, 6-time Ironman champion in Hawaii. And we wrote this paper, came out last week. And yeah, it's just bringing that. I guess the importance of being being healthy. And we were just saying there's too many unhealthy athletes out there. And we think there's probably the two big rocks in terms of contributing to that. Probably both, the training's inappropriate and the eating is inappropriate. So on the training standpoint, you've probably got this in general. I know Yanni sees it all the time. We've got a brain that's motivated by this stress of no pain, no gain. And that is rampant in society. But at the end of the day, sometimes you need to kind of slow down a little bit first to optimize that fat oxidation rate before you can go fast. Okay, and I won't bore you with the details in this one. We can go back to it if you'd like. But basically, we draw a couple of links between why this unhealthiness is just kind of plagued around. So we've got too much volume of high intensity training, and we've also got this high glycemic and highly processed refined foods, and it comes together in a perfect storm ultimately, and it creates an unhealthy athlete or individual. And we throw a blanket cause over this called the overtraining syndrome, but and it's usually it manifests in so many different ways, but yeah, ultimately it tends to be more often than not, these are the first two things that we want to kind of try to change, and we often get success when we change those things eventually. So back to what matters, your ability to burn that fat is, for both your health and your performance, is vital. And again, one of the key concepts was around the diet. And there's lots of people, lots of really smart authors that are out there right now. Professor Grant Schofield here in New Zealand, Karen Zinn doing What the Fat. We've got Tim Noakes and the Real Meal Revolution over in South Africa, and we've got Phil Maftone as well, my colleague in the States. So he's got a great website with an awesome resource, philmaftone.com. So highly recommend you check that out. And outstanding stuff. And I know that Yanni preaches this as well. So it's I think it helps us all. So Phil tends to say if you want, he says if you want speed, but I kind of just changed it. If you want power, slow down. So one of the things that we're going to do today is we're going to do a little bit of a test. Remember that we need to measure what matters. Well, if we know that fat burning matters, let's devise a test that can assess our own levels of fat burning. Let's see if it's something we can actually change. Okay, and to do that, we've come up with a bit of a modified. So Phil works mostly in the running domain, but what my colleague Dan Plews and I kind of come up with this one here, where you ride for about 30 minutes at your MAF heart rate, which is 180 minus your age. So do the math for yourself. What would be your MAF heart rate? So just take 180 and subtract your age to it. Or because not everyone has there's some individuals with very high maximal heart rates and some with very low ones. So if you actually know your maximum heart rate, so for example, my max heart rate is 191, but I'm 45, so I'm definitely way off in that. Ronan was mentioning to me as well. What was your max heart rate? 163, but you're 27, so you're way off as well, right? So we've got this is a global general formula, but if you know your max heart rate, then modify accordingly and just take 40 off of that. That generally tends to be where your aerobic threshold is, your first ventilatory threshold, or your MAF heart rate. All right, so and you should be doing the majority of your training in this ballpark, all right? At least 80% according to the polarized training programs, or polarized studies that are out there. And this is what it looks. So I'm not sure, guys, if you want to come up and get this going, maybe get you going with the test. But basically, this is what we're going to do. We're following a 10-minute warm up. We're going to get you to try to lock in at your MAF heart rate, and we're going to hopefully this unit here can record the power output, and we're going to see how stable that power output is. Okay, and so what I often do, this is Training Peaks. You guys are probably familiar with Training Peaks. But basically, so this is me doing this test the other day. You can kind of see here's my warm-up phase, the power and the heart rate. And then you can see that I lock into my 149 beats per minute, or thereabouts. And you can see what happens to my power, kind of coming down a bit. So not as good. I'm a little bit unfit, and my fat burning probably isn't as good as it had been before that Ironman event. All right, but this is, and the power output wound up being, just out of interest, 197. So, and then to compare that, I did the Taupo Ironman at about 212, 215 watts, something like that. So what your Ironman pace on the bike is probably where your MAF, your MAF level is, or your aerobic threshold. All right, so this is a really good marker, a really good test to be able to measure your ability to burn fat. If we see a rise in power output at the same MAF heart rate, you're doing something good. You're improving your ability to burn fat. All right, because there's more ATP, there's more energy being generated. And the other one that we see. So this is the other aspect of the test that's kind of interesting. So after 5 minutes easy, I snipped this. I found out, I did a lap basically on my Garmin. Found out I rode at 197 heart rate, or sorry, 197 power. And then I rode just at 197 watts for 10 more minutes to kind of check it. And what do we see? We see it locks in there for a little bit, but it still drifts a bit. So I'm probably a little bit off. It's probably either the power is probably a little bit high, or the heart rate's a little bit high. But either way, so I'll need to kind of fine tune this. Ideally, I would want that one to just be stable and flat, right? Because that's what it winds up being for Ironman, what you want ultimately if you want to run off that. One of the reasons I was here was to try to explain a few of the variables that you might see when you get that report back from Yanni. So one of these ones you may have seen is your functional threshold power. We spoke about this one before when we talked about Karen and the importance of having a high FTP. We know Roman has a very high FTP, functional threshold power, of 390 watts. That means that he can ride for nearly an hour at 390 watts. That's it. Simply, that's pretty amazing, right? Like, so that's going to be he's going to be beating us all here, and it's going to be serving very well for a time trial, obviously. Likewise, I would predict that his MAF heart rate and MAF power would probably only be maybe 100 watts less than that, maybe even less, maybe like 90 watts less than that, maybe sitting around 300. So and that's I coach some elite Ironman guys, and that's kind of a target that they go for doing like a 410 to 425 Ironman bike time, if that means anything to anyone here that knows the triathlon. So it's exceptional. The training stress score, we've spoken about this training stress score here, and this is really we spoke about my number on my session there, 44.5 for a MAF test. So let's try to understand what the training stress score means. Basically, this is, in simple terms, it is the number of minutes that are accumulated at your FTP. So if Roman goes and does a time trial at 390 watts for 1 hour, he will get a score of 100. Right? If he rides at about 200 watts for that hour, he'll get a score of about 50. If he does intervals and he's spiking over top of that 390, if he's doing VO2 max intervals and he's up around 500 watts for 5 minutes at a time with some recovery, his training stress score will be above that number because we take into something that's the next one here called your normalized power, NP. I think I've seen that one on Yanni's output. Your normalized power is taking into account a lot of the big spikes that we see, and basically using mathematics, it equates those high intensity spikes to what they actually would be if you were going to do a more prolonged effort. Yeah. It's good to hit the high step every once in a while, absolutely, and if we're trying to peak for a race. Principle specificity, we know we're going to have to reach some of these high intensity powers. We've got to go and hit those. That's I think I'll show you here next one of hopefully. Yeah, so here's a classic example. So yeah, did Karen train hard for her Olympics? Hell yeah. And this is a classic short interval period that she did. I love short intervals. They're fantastic. So this is the cool thing about this is actually done in the field. So this is actually done in Karen's farm. She's got loads of mountain bike trails. They're all sitting around there. And here's some short intervals examples. These are 30-30s, and you get a really neat response with a 30-30 workout. Where you go, 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy, 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy. Do a set of those for 6 to 8, or even 4 to 8 if you progress those, and it's a great way to get a nice neural stimulation and fast twitch muscle fiber stimulation in the larger motor units of your muscles. Building up that muscle base that we know is so important, and then recovering for 30 seconds and repeating that, and then doing multiple sets of those, right? So and you can see the heart rate profile that we get from that is quite interesting. We get even though she's doing these long periods of nothing almost, the heart rate kind of it shows a bit of a lag time, and it sits up there in the threshold level, so around your L4. So just this was one of Karen's favorite workouts. When I put this one on here, she had some great comments underneath, just saying how much she enjoyed the workout. So and really got a good gain from it. You're maximizing VO2 max with this, your threshold, and your high intensity powers. So highly recommend short intervals. Just pockets of 30-30 with solid rests between your series. And then long intervals. These ones are very taxing. The VO2 max intervals we spoke about before, vital to the performance of the elite athlete. 5-minute MMP, 5-minute max mean power that we talked about before, your VO2 max. But incredibly stressful, and you really need to be cautious with how much you're giving your athletes or giving yourself, because this is where you can run into those big cortisol responses, the big adrenaline responses. Important in the lead up to key events, but caution about giving this too often. And then good threshold durations, 6 to 10, even 20-minute durations, and repeated ones depending on the athlete that you are training or yourself. So yeah, so high intensity is, I'm by no means saying don't do it. I prefer to have at least 80% of your training in the aerobic kind of zone to maximize that fat burning. But yeah, these are really important as well to if you're trying to optimize that performance, do this after you have a solid foundation of your fat burning and your aerobic training.
What about the significance or not of just burning calories on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So the question was, I certainly will. So the question was, well, what about the calorie burn? So with the, when I am looking at the high intensity workouts that I do, the calorie burn is a lot higher. Now you're telling me to go and train easy here. My calorie burn isn't going to be as much. Isn't that going to affect, maybe weight loss is a bit of a goal for me. I'm not sure I like that idea. And that is, unfortunately, there are, we've got it all, I believe, we've got it all wrong with respect to the calories in and calories out formula. It's not that simple. So if you are, I guess, doing the exercise as these guys are doing it right now, they are burning calories, but they're not adding any stress to their system, right? So there's a minimal amount of cortisol. There's a minimal amount of adrenaline that's going to be being spewed out. They're not creating a massive amount of stress to their overall body. And as a result, when they finish this workout, they're going to feel actually they're going to be quite fine, right? And I guess at the end of the day, without that stress, remember what stress caused? Remember what I was mentioning before? Stress causes that big glucose spill out. Glucose, what did we learn glucose causes? What follows glucose for the diabetics? Insulin. Insulin blocks your ability to get at your fat stores. So there's this book called The Poor Misunderstood Calorie, and it gives like about 10 scientific mistruths about the calorie in, calorie out phenomena. So to answer your question, it's unfortunately just, we shouldn't even have calories up there. It's just not a relevant thing that we should be measuring. Again, back to my philosophy, understand what matters and then measure what matters. We'll measure that one, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is your overall stress, this polarized model. Don't be counting calories.
That's a good question because a lot of our customers here, they say to me, they want to burn in 500 calories, so they go really hard at the last part of the workout to burn 500 or 800
Of course, yeah.
or 1,000, you know.
It's a super question, and
we can take this off somehow, you know.
I know. We've all been duped into believing that. You can't take it. Oh, there you go. IT expert's going to say when we take it off.
Can you put the fasting then and put the calories?
Talk about fasting? Yeah, well, absolutely.
Calories per week.
Yeah.
Fallacy.
So say again. So
Calorie in, calorie out fallacy.
it is a fallacy. It is.
Yeah, documented.
Yeah. That's great. So you're aware of that too. Yeah. So it's Kurt is well aware that the calorie in, calorie out model has been well and truly debunked. It just doesn't work that way. The macronutrients that we take in, they have various different signaling mechanisms to cause your I guess your change of body weight, your ability to store or get rid of fuel and mass. So look more. Don't look at the calories that you're burning. Look at the. Although that's still important, but you're gonna be better off in the long run if you are, I guess, just training appropriately, keeping stress low in your body, and then the same with the calories in. Yes, there comes a point when you can overconsume too much of any of the macronutrients, fat, carbs, or protein. But if you had to take a pick at which one you wanted to have less of, it would be probably the carbohydrates in general. I'm generalizing. So they have a different effect because of their blood glucose response, because of their insulin response. Okay, so, and again, I'm generalizing. You can still gain weight on a high-fat diet, most definitely. However, some of these other factors are probably coming into play to cause that, including a lot of stress, poor sleep. You probably don't have your carbohydrate content low enough. I should also mention too that if you're exercising, you're also giving your body permission, kind of thing, to have a few more carbs from time to time. So I love a beer like the rest of us, right? But I find that if I'd rather have my beer when I know my liver is depleted of glycogen. So at the end of the day, that's kind of, or after I work, I've worked out kind of before, I'll treat myself to a beer, and because it's important to be social and all those sorts of things too.
Just explain that part you said about the beer, whatever it might be, carbohydrate, when your liver is depleted of glycogen.
Sure. So the question was, can you explain a little bit more about what you meant there about your liver being depleted of glycogen? So we have a finite carbohydrate sink in our body. We store approximately, maximally about 400 grams of carbohydrate, and about 300 would be in our muscles, and we have a nice big liver that maintains our blood glucose, and the liver scores about 100 grams of glycogen. So what winds up happening over the course of the day, especially if you fast, our thirsty brain, which requires that glucose, it outputs slowly to control the blood glucose level that we require. So at the end of the day, when you're feeling a little bit peckish and whatnot, your liver is now done with outputting its blood glucose, or sorry, its glycogen, its liver glycogen, and your blood glucose level will fall a bit. And the muscles are the carbohydrate can't come out of those, so that's stuck in there basically. But the liver kind of depletes. So the idea is, if I've got only 10 grams left of glucose in my liver, if I'm having, that's kind of the opportunity. I can treat myself to a carbohydrate source. I'm aware at that point, and it won't spike my blood glucose. It won't spike my insulin. It won't blunt my fat oxidation levels. Great question. Say again.
The time that you eat.
The time that you eat
Is critical to insulin release.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's
going to affect your
spiking epidemics.
Absolutely. So you've done a 3-hour ride. And 2 water bottles, just water, no goose. You're not super fat adapted. You're going to be freaking hungry, right? Yeah. So the cool news is your muscle cells are wide open and your liver is wide open, and you're not gonna spike your insulin at that point in time. And I guess when I was going through my phase of now I won't anymore because I just don't need it and don't like it. But I would have a square with a coffee, right? With the coffee and cream, because I can and whatnot. And then now I just kind of don't like it, but yeah, you just keep going. You just keep tweaking it until you find whatever is good for you. Remember, there's no one size fits all, but just making some of these little subtle changes can make these differences, these adaptations that matter. Yeah. So just try it. Don't go cold turkey and try to do what I'm doing now, because it's taken me 5 years to get to this phase. So just do one small thing maybe that I mentioned tonight. So yeah, I don't want anyone killing themselves after this and getting a message when I'm in Europe.
For us, it's a bit counterintuitive because we think that our body's a bit like a car and you've got to keep pouring in fuel to keep riding. And what you're saying is, well, there's a whole bunch of fuel already there, and that sort of feels a bit counterintuitive when you're out there. I think you've got to keep pouring.
Oh, that's such a good question. It's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. So the question, I guess, was, you kind of, we kind of, it's almost like the calories in, calories out model, right? Where you're thinking that it's like a car. We have to always kind of keep feeding it, and I love this kind of analogy. Jeff Volek uses this analogy. This is your carbohydrate stores that I was just talking about. This is your glucose. So here we have your liver and your skeletal muscle, right? Remember that 400 grams of glycogen? That's your muscle right there in the tanker. That's the gas that you're filling up there. And isn't it kind of ironic that a tanker truck full of gasoline, this is us, we can go down and all of a sudden we bonk. Yet sitting on board is almost an arguably unlimited amount of petrol in the form of fat. But we can't use it. We can't use it because we've sabotaged it through, I guess, our insulin level, or we're unable to get that. So I guess to answer your question, by doing some of these little tweaks that I'm mentioning, you're opening up the tube to your fat stores, because we can. I think all of us in this room have the ability, even the leanest of us individuals, have the ability on our fat stores to run down to Dunedin. All right, so that's pretty solid distance. If we, and not riding but running, right? So even harder. We can all get down there. The question was, I think, do you want to remove sugar from your training stimulus, or do you want to train easy at the MAF heart rate? And I really think you want to do both. You want to curb sugar out of your training diet as best you can, and train a little bit more, at least 80% at your MAF heart rate, yeah, or thereabouts. So we've got Roman's data up here, guys. He did a great little test. We've got so he rode. Excuse me. Roman has a very low maximum heart rate. So Roman did the was around 166. Roman, I'm not sure where he went, but yeah, it was around 166. Yeah, so 168. So he did because that's such a low maximum heart rate for a young man. He took 40 beats off, which is a great little marker, and his power output, his mean or average power output that he wound up riding for that was 233 watts, What I would love to see is the slope of the line. So, because I know he started out considerably higher than that, and what I guess sometimes that slope of that line can give an indicator of how carb or fat adapted that you are. The flatter that line, what do you think? The better fat oxidation that you've got. That's right. And the converse. So very nice. I mean, he can ride at this power. That'll mean a lot to a lot of us in here. He can ride at that all day, pretty much. Right? Yeah, easy, eh? 5 hours, no problem. Yeah. So that's kind of an indicator there. So both the slope of that, and so he can monitor if he wants to make any of these sort of adjustments. He can come back. He can ride it again at that 126 beats per minute heart rate. He would be looking to see the same two things I mentioned. He would be looking to see an increase in overall in the average power output over that 30 minutes, and he would also be looking, is there any change in the slope of my line? Is it a little bit more stable throughout? Those are two good signs that you're improving your fat oxidation rate. Okay, so which are we? This one here. So we've got watts in blue. So this is the warm up, right? Warmed up for 10, and then he locked in here. So there it is. Kind of he's starting out high. He's done a great job of holding that heart rate. You can just see that red line. The heart rate is nice and stable. But notice how the slope of the line does come down a little bit, and you'd expect. I mean, mine did as well. But yeah, the more fat adapted that we get, the more solid that line will get for the duration of that. Yeah. There's another relationship I'll just mention to you as well. So based on your FTP, if you know your FTP, your MAF, your aerobic threshold is usually about 0.79 off of your FTP. So FTP, take 0.79, whatever that power is. It's probably around the ballpark of where your MAF heart rate power is.
So if you were going to just absolutely simplify it, 3 sessions a week in here.
Yep.
So 3 1-hour sessions. Would you sort of be inclined to say 2 1-hour sessions would be at MAF, and then a 1-hour session would be sort of a bit more intense? Yeah,
that might be a way to do it. I'd ask you, what are you doing outside of that? Are you doing any work on the road or other aerobic training?
Yeah, long roads.
Well, see, yeah. So I mean, that's where I think the ergs and the tools that you have in here are fantastic for the ability to do your quality interval work. So I've got a mate, Dan Plews, and we just we have a garage and garage workouts together, and they're fantastic for being able to do those quality high intensity sort of efforts that I'm sure many of us are kind of doing there. I like to do the bulk of my 80% aerobic MAF training on the road. So we have long sort of chit-chatty rides, and the only time it might raise up a little bit is when you go over the Y-tax a bit, but we're kind of fit enough where we can kind of go pretty aerobic over those too. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the answer is it depends. I do love having quality sessions in here, maybe 1 to 2. So I think the answer is 1 to 2 of those 3 sessions would be, either way, either the MAF or the spiky ones, intervals.
Can we just put our hands together for Paul Laursen?
Thank you. Pleasure, mate. Pleasure.